is pimping. I-N-G. I-N-G means I'm not going sending chick, right? You know what I'm saying? And that's what you get when you get into the game. And most guys can't reach that level. They can reach the armed robbery, they can reach the drug game, they can be the stick-up boy, you know what I'm saying? They can even be the trick in the club. But to reach that level of pimping, that's elite game because it's a mind game. Even though the various reasons that I just explained, you still have to be mentally equipped to deal with a woman because a woman comes more wired than a man. That's why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, get a woman 7 years your junior. Because you want a woman to be younger than you because women mature faster. So imagine a prostitute that's out there turning dates and talking to everybody and being with every pimp. She gonna run circles around that little dude, you know what I'm saying? So you got to have some type of mental stamina to deal with the situation. You know, so all that encompasses the whole scenario, but you still got to be ing. If you a pimp, that's a noun, person, place, and thing. But if you pimp in, that's ing. That means you're active and attractive. That's an active verb. You know, that's an action verb. You know, so that's where we get the differences in the game. So a lot of dudes want to go from the drug dealer. Like, remember I told you my partner gave me a pack? I was like, man, F that. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to try the game. You know what I'm saying? The game worked for me. And then some people take to the game, and a lot of people don't know this, brother 19. You got brothers that you see and brothers that you don't see. The ones you don't see, they some real top flight dudes that live on golf course, got mansions, Rolls Royce, they right here. You know, and some of them ain't even this complexion. Some of them got the complexion for the connection. Some of them Europeans, you know, and they run major brothels and major massage parlors, and they Asian, and they get a whole bunch of money. But because of the exploitation films of the 1970s and the 60s, you know, you see the Mac, you see Willie Dolomite, you see Superfly, and that's the definition of the game. But being from the game, that is not even a game. Those dudes you see on International and on Clay Street and on Figueroa, those are not real. No, they in the game, but they not the real ones that's really getting the money. Because you can't get a lot of money flat back. Real guys that's in the game, they don't sell. They sell reality. It's a difference. You know, they teach these brothers how to go in the trick, go in the reality. It's a difference. You know, they teach these brothers how to go in the trick, but get a lot of money flat back. Real guys, not the real ones that's really getting the money. Because you can't get it from the game. That is not even a game. Those dudes you see on International and on Clay Street and on Figueroa, those are not real. They in the game, but they not the real ones that's really getting the money. Because you can't get a lot of money flat back. Real guys that's in the game, they don't sell. They sell reality. It's a difference. You know, they teach these brothers how to go in the trick, go in the casino, and sit down. Because, you know, a lot of people don't know in the casino, you know, you can get as much money as you want out. And these girls, they go and they sit down with these guys, and they go to these casino booths, these cashiers, and they get $10,000. And these dudes, you know, they get these girls all this money. Some of them, they go in these clubs, you know, they sit down, they go in the VIP room, they never touch them, they sell reality. But a lot of dudes on the corner, how much, like Goldie like said, how much money can you really make on the track? You know, you can't make a lot of money on the track. And then the chances of her getting killed, the chances of her going to jail, the prospect of her getting taken by another P is high. You know, but the guys that really do it, that's a brother down in Miami right now. I ain't gonna say his name, but he owns a strip club. He got 21 bras. And they all up under contract. And it's all business. You know, what's that? Dennis Hoff, the Bunny Ranch. You know, that white dude was one of the richest white dudes before he died in the game. He had everybody, you know, coming to his brothels buying legal prostitution. So it depends on how you look at it. Now, what's happening is, and I'm gonna say this because I gotta say this in conclusion before I forget. What's happening is we got a thing called human trafficking, right? Human trafficking is when you take a woman that's underage and have sex with her or sell her body. Human trafficking is you take a woman to the strip club and make her dance and take her money. Human trafficking is if you get a woman from me and she been in the game and you take her and even though you didn't know that what was going on, you know, you still going to jail for that. Human trafficking is if you take a woman to the hotel and it's a sting operation, the police get there, they give you, you're gonna be facing 15 to life. That's human trafficking. But the original human traffickers are the slave owners that brought us to this country. How dare them call the so-called black man a human trafficker when we all was brought here against our will. That's why I said we non-immigrants, but they have taken something that they've done to us and put it on, and domesticated, put it on young African American men. But initially, when you was watching 2020 and all these programs, they would say it's for people from foreign countries who bring in young kids over here against their will, like from Guam and from the Philippines. Now it's domesticated. You see all the brothers in the hood going to jail for human trafficking and getting 15 to life. But they don't. If that's the case, it says retroactive. If it's retroactive, then what about the people that enslaved us? If you look at in 1864, you had 5 million African Americans, brothers and sisters enslaved. If you only gave them 50 cents in minimum wage, that's $4 a day. That's $20 million a day times 264 years, 250 years. And we look at this stuff and we say, man, what's going on? And then you look at how it came about, bro. I talk about denouncing pimps up, hold down. I denounce American pimp. Think about this, 19 Keys. At that era and at that time, they propagated, they promoted that. They made me a superstar, Pippi Ken, everybody loving me, everybody loving Bishop Don Juan, we the dudes, Kitty Red, and everything. And next thing you know, all the rappers start endorsing us. I'm on 80 million records with rappers talking about the game. But guess what happened? Right after that, they hit him with human trafficking. The same thing with Scarface. You remember Scarface? When Scarface first came on the move, we all had Scarfaces and cigars. We all wanted to, get that plug. And we all got that plug. Right after that, in 1984, you start seeing crime bills. You start seeing trigger laws. You start seeing sentence enhancement law. The 85% rule. And all that tied into the drug game. Nino Brown, Colors. What they do, you got brothers banging in Little Rock now because they watch Colors. So when they watch Pimps Up, Hoes Down, now they're impressionable. Now they really want to be in the game. Some of us in the game, but some of them, man, some of these dudes, man, these women, man, they paying fixed up garbage cans. Some of these dudes is monkey with no pockets. You know what I'm saying? They not no real ism, you know what I'm saying? But they think they is because they see it. And now, it got so profuse. And then if you look at the tracks that you're talking about, look at Figueroa. There's so many prostitutes walking around naked on there, right? Man, come on, man. These folks, man, these the same people talking about COINTELPRO. You think they ain't setting us up? You think they ain't putting them girls out there, letting these guys put these women out there to set them up because if they got the human trafficking law, look what they did to the Black Panthers. They had informants all in the Black Panthers. They probably got dudes out there talking about their ism and really ain't nothing but informant. And they making it think it's cool, and they ain't arresting women now because they know we're gonna arrest, we're gonna do a big sting. And that's why I try to tell the brothers, man, don't fall for the fried ice cream. That's all it is, and that's why I try to tell brothers, man, if you can do, you don't have to be out there, doing all this stuff, man, to live well. We live well, and I ain't doing none of that.
Yeah, I think when you get to the deeper root of it, because I think going back to the 70s and the Mac and all of those exploitation films. A lot of that was them shifting over from this politically conscious culture, right? And pushing this pimp culture on us.
Yeah.
And so that's when bruh seen the pimp as the superhero. You feel me? He was the flyest. He wore the flamboyant clothes. He had the women. In those days, the pimp was a fighter. You feel me? He was strong.
Yeah.
It was different. And so, that particular image became rampant. It became impressionable for our culture. It became a part of our culture. But we always forget, okay, what was the culture before that?
Right.
You feel me? Which was of a higher, more advanced level because we was really speaking on our own liberation and being free. But now the version of who we are today is not a representation of who we used to be.
Right.
As far as where we're going. You talk about the Moore Science Temple. Those are brothers that focus on knowledge of self. Right? And so now we at this standpoint to where, the pimping that you see out here now is a very low level of it.
Absolutely.
You feel me? It's guerrilla pimping. It's all of these things that's really based on people issues.
Give the game a black
You feel me?
Yeah.
And, prostitution and sex workers go back, right? Hundreds of thousands of years.
Hey, buddy.
Right? And whether it was
Kobe.
Mesoamerica to
Cut
Rome
it out.
to Greece to Japan, right? Between, I think, Asia and the North Americas, I think you're going to find the highest rate of sex workers in the world.
Right.
And, in most states in America, it's illegal besides Nevada But the way that we propagate it in our culture, we don't push it if it's something wrong. And I want to kind of get your question is of how you view the modern day lens of like the sex liberation movement, right? Because it's basically kind of self pimping, nowadays, right? Where you have the women who push out sexual liberation as a form of freedom against patriarchal control of their bodies.
Right.
And so, but when they really look at it, when I grew up, and the way I look at a prostitute that was walking down High Street, it's the same way I look at a girl now that's walking down the street. I can't tell the difference, right? Because they wear the same uniform.
Absolutely.
So I want to kind of get into the psychology of, what is the psychology of a woman that decides to be a sex worker, right? Because some of them, they impressioned by it being around them and being normalized, right? Then they get into it. Some people, like, they were molested when they was younger. Some women, they do it just out of economic necessity. They need to pay some bills, right? Some are manipulated and exploited in the game. But when you looking at a young girl, right, what are some of the signs to see that she may go down that route?
Well, first sign that a brother that's in the game look for is somebody that's promiscuous. You know what I'm saying? We call it the neighborhood hoe. So with a PC that he's gonna ride through that neighborhood in a new car, and she already motor drunk. That means that she cars. She love cars. And then you pull up, and then when you get her in that car, you're gonna say, "Hey, look, mom, you're doing all this for nothing. Let me show you how to do this for something." So that usually comes from molestation. It comes from being raped by a father, or being raped by an uncle, or raped by a brother, and now she don't have no value on her sexual preference, right, on her body. She lose value because that was taken from her at a young age, and she don't see that Virgin Mary. She don't see getting married and having somebody take her virginity, because her virginity was stolen from her. So now she finds out early that sex is a weapon. So she weaponized her body, and she used it against all the dudes in the hood to get weed and get liquor and so on and so forth, get her way. But what the P does is he recognized, this, and he preys on that, and he used that to his advantage. And then he showed how to get more money. He might say, "Look here, I got this dude." He might get one of his OGs. He say, "Here you go, man, $500, man. Get this to this bra, let her, have sex." And then when she have sex, she gonna get used to money. And once she get the money, then she get into the actual culture, and she see the other prostitutes and the P's. It become a part of her DNA. It's like, hey, this is the game. I'm in this game. But what people don't talk about is that nowadays, I just gave you that aspect. I'm gonna give you a whole nother aspect that's gonna be a whole nother perspective. Nowadays, you got Cardi B, you got Megan Thee Stallion, you got Sexy Red, you got all these women saying all this, "I'm a hoe, I'm a B, I'm this, I'm that." And these young people are on Instagram. We didn't have Instagram in my day. And now they see how these girls are dancing and how they doing all this stuff, and they're following because they're very impressionable. Just like I said, how all the young dudes want to be a pimp because they seen Pimpin' King and Don Juan. You know what I'm saying? And Virgil. You know what I'm saying? So when they see all that impressed them. So they see, and then, remember Lil Wayne, the rapper? When Lil Wayne said he was a blood, right?
Yeah.
Look what happened. The whole country became blood.
Yeah.
When Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B started being hoes, and I could say somebody else, but I know they married. I don't want them to be offended. But you got married women that's superstars, that dress like prostitutes as well. If you go on the track and you go on TV, they dress just like the bra that's on the blade. So all this is being psychologically, we are creatures of habit, but we also are subjective. We subliminally, if through repetition, if you see something along, enough you begin to believe that.
Right, psychologically, if you call yourself a hoe, you call yourself a pimp, which comes from the culture of the music, you start to see that as an image of yourself, making it easier to accept as you grow up because you grow into it.
Yeah, or if you're listening to drill music,
Yeah.
it's obviously all the brothers in Chicago
Right.
are doing drills.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They're gonna be killing each other because you're listening to it, and what people don't understand, the mind is a computer, right? Garbage in, garbage out. Everything you see, all these books, even your Star Moon, your mind is simultaneously picking up this information. And it's going straight to your subconscious mind. Now, if you're listening to somebody talking about killing and all this every day, all day, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna become a gangster. If you're watching all these girls being sexy and sexy red, and they see to get all the attention. Like I said, when Lil Wayne said he was a blood, everybody became a blood. I had partners, man. I'm like, Hill, when you become a blood? You know what I'm saying? But they became bloods, right? Because of that money. And this say who complicit. The record labels is complicit. Why? Because they want these young men to be out here gang banging. They want them to be Bloods and Crips and GDs and Vice Lord. So they pay for that. They give Cardi B all these millions of dollars. They give Megan Thee Stallion all these millions of dollars. They give Nicki Minaj all these millions of dollars because they want them to promote that image. And that's what they're paying for. But they won't let their children do. So you ask any record label, sit down with the exec, say, so I just want to ask you a question. Sir, why would you put all this filth and debauchery into a community when you know the community is already suffering from poverty? Or, that's what they want to hear. If you ask any artist, say, Lil Wayne, what do they tell you when you don't do certain things? You're not being hood enough, you're not being gangster enough. So it's social engineered as well. We're being engineered to be pimps, hoes, and prostitutes, and gangsters, and killers.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been talking about when we look at the Olympics, right? The Olympics, you see us dominating in every single sport.
Right.
That's who we are.